Why is a child begging her father to eat his own lunch? Evelyn Hart asked, holding the purple ink note above an open Navy lunchbox. The laughter in the break room died unevenly as Daniel Mercer stopped in the doorway, one hand still resting on the metal frame. Grant Vale reached for the lid with a practiced smile. It's a private family matter, Ms. Hart. Beside the half sandwich lay a paper bag marked for Mara. Daniel's voice remained quiet. That wasn't meant for the room. 3 hours earlier, the warehouse had awakened beneath the cold buzz of fluorescent lights and the hydraulic sigh of forklifts lifting pallets into steel racks. The air smelled of cardboard dust, machine grease, and coffee that had burned too long on the break room warmer. Daniel moved through receiving in his faded blue work shirt and orange safety vest, checking inventory numbers twice before signing his name. His steel-toed boots were worn pale at the edges. The Navy lunchbox sat on a shelf near his station, its yellow star sticker curling slightly where Lily had pressed it down with both thumbs the week before. Grant crossed the floor carrying a tablet, greeting workers by name and reminding them that Hartwell was a family built on flexibility. His tone was warm enough to belong in a training video. When he reached Daniel, he lowered his voice. "You're still unable to take tonight's shift?" "I can take Saturday morning and Sunday," Daniel said. "I entered both requests." Grant's smile stayed in place. "The team needs people when the work exists, not when it's convenient." Daniel glanced toward the schedule board. Several red blocks had appeared beside his name since Monday. He said nothing about them. Instead, he noticed a young loader struggling to steady a torn carton near the conveyor. Daniel stepped away, caught the bottom before it split, and helped tape the seam without calling a supervisor. "Scan it again," he told the boy. The first label folded under. By noon, executives arrived without warning. Dark coats, polished shoes, clean visitor badges. Evelyn Hart walked among them with a black folder beneath one arm and a silver watch flashing under the warehouse lights. She listened more than she spoke, but Grant remained close, describing improved efficiency, lower labor costs, and stronger employee satisfaction. In the break room, catered lunches were placed along the counter. Daniel's lunchbox had been moved to make space, then set among the identical dark containers reserved for the visiting team. He arrived late after correcting an inventory discrepancy and paused outside when he heard someone laugh. "This is executive dining?" a coworker joked as Evelyn lifted the wrong lid. Inside was almost nothing. Half a sandwich wrapped in wax paper, a small apple, children's crackers, and the folded note taped beneath the lid. A brown paper bag sat beside it, Daniel's careful block letters spelling Mara's name. Evelyn pulled the note free. Grant stepped between her and the table as if shielding her from an inconvenience. "Mercer has had some difficulty separating personal issues from work," he said. "We've tried to be supportive." Daniel entered before anyone could answer. He picked up the apple that had rolled toward the edge, polished it against his sleeve, and placed it inside the bag for Mara. Someone near the vending machines gave a nervous chuckle. Daniel did not look at them. Evelyn's eyes moved from the nearly empty lunchbox to his face. "Is this yours?" "Yes, ma'am." "And Mara?" Grant answered before Daniel could. "She isn't even one of our employees." Evelyn turned slowly toward him. The vending machine hummed in the sudden quiet. Grant's hand remained suspended above the lid, his smile still polite, still controlled. Evelyn looked down at the paper bag, then back at him. "I didn't ask who Mara was." Evelyn's question settled over the break room like a dropped tool nobody wanted to pick up. Grant's hand lowered slowly from the lunchbox lid, but his smile did not move. "I was only trying to provide context, then provide it accurately." "Of course." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, hard and white, flattening every face in the room. Coffee burned in the glass pot near the sink, and the vending machine compressor kicked on with a low mechanical hum. Grant turned toward the employees with the calm posture of a man, beginning a safety briefing. "Since this has become public, perhaps we should clear up a misunderstanding before it affects morale." Daniel's jaw tightened once, then relaxed. He kept one hand around the handle of the Navy lunchbox, while the other folded the brown paper bag marked for Mara along its crease. Grant tapped his tablet. Mr. Mercer has had repeated scheduling difficulties. He declines evening shifts, requests last-minute changes, and places additional strain on coworkers who have families of their own. A few heads turned toward Daniel. Someone near the microwave murmured, "That explains it." Another voice answered softly, "Always wondered why he got special treatment." Grant let the whispers breathe before continuing. "We have tried to be flexible. Hartwell takes care of its people." Behind him, the blue and white poster bearing those exact words hung over the schedule board. One corner had peeled loose from the wall, revealing a strip of red marker beneath it. Daniel's name was visible at the edge, followed by several crossed-out shifts. Evelyn noticed the marks, but said nothing. "Did you refuse tonight's shift?" Grant asked. "Yes." "Did you request other hours?" "Saturday morning and Sunday." The room quieted again. Daniel's voice held no anger, only the flat steadiness of a man who had repeated the same truth too many times. Grant swiped across his tablet. "Those hours were not operationally necessary." Daniel looked at the schedule board. "They were open when I requested them." Grant's smile thinned. "Availability changes." Near the counter, a young loader named Tyler bumped into another employee while trying to step out of the crowd. His paper plate tilted, and the sandwich slid onto the floor beside the trash can. A few people glanced down, then away. Daniel opened his lunchbox, took out the untouched half sandwich, and held it toward him. "Here." Tyler stared. "No, man, that's yours. You've got 4 hours left." "What about you?" Daniel placed the sandwich on the edge of Tyler's plate. "I'll be fine." He closed the lunchbox before anyone could see that nothing remained inside. Evelyn's eyes moved from his empty hands to Grant's tablet. She did not soften. She simply watched. Grant cleared his throat. This is exactly the kind of thing that creates confusion. Personal gestures blur professional boundaries. Daniel looked at him. It was half a sandwich. It becomes more than that when people believe they owe you. "He doesn't owe me." Tyler lowered his eyes, embarrassed to be standing inside someone else's argument. Daniel stepped slightly to the side, giving him room to leave. The small action was almost invisible, but Evelyn saw it. Grant shifted his attention toward the room. "No one is being punished here. We are discussing accountability. A warehouse cannot operate around one employee's personal circumstances." Daniel ran his thumb along the curling edge of the yellow star sticker on his lunchbox. "I never asked it to. You asked for special scheduling. I asked to replace 2-night shifts with open weekend hours, which were denied. By you." The hum of the vending machine stopped. For 1 second, the room became so still that the soft crackle of wax paper inside Tyler's plate sounded sharp. Grant's expression remained professional, but the color rose slightly along his collar. "Management decisions are based on team needs, Daniel, not individual preference." Evelyn turned toward the schedule board. "Show me the open weekend hours." Grant answered quickly. "That board isn't current." Tessa Monroe, who had entered without anyone noticing, stepped closer to the wall. Her HR badge caught the light as she lifted the poster by its loose corner. Beneath it, Daniel's name ran across a row of red blocks. 4 other names appeared below his, each marked the same way. "Red indicates employee-requested flexibility?" Evelyn asked. Grant nodded. "Correct." Tessa did not. Her finger hovered over one of the codes printed beside Daniel's canceled shift. "No," she said quietly. "Red is manager-initiated removal." The room changed again. Not dramatically. No one gasped. But several employees stopped looking at Daniel and began looking at Grant. He gave a soft, patient laugh. The coding system was updated last quarter. Tessa may be remembering the old version. Tessa's eyes stayed on the board. "I wrote the update." Daniel looked past them at the poster still lifted in her hand. "Hartwell takes care of its family" remained printed across the front while the crossed-out hours showed through the thin paper from behind. Grant reached up and gently lowered the poster back into place. We should not turn a routine scheduling matter into a spectacle. Daniel's gaze dropped to a warning form clipped beneath the board. His name was typed at the top. Under the words lack of flexibility, the signature line was empty. He had never seen the form before. Evelyn followed his eyes, then looked at Grant. Did Mr. Mercer sign that? Grant glanced at the paper for less than a second. He declined. Daniel's voice came low and certain. No one asked me. Grant turned toward him with the same careful smile. You may not remember. Daniel looked at the date printed beside the unsigned line. Then he looked at the warehouse clock above the door. The warning claimed he had been present in Grant's office at 3:10 p.m. on Tuesday, but Daniel remembered that time because he had been scanning an emergency shipment on the far side of the building under a camera and a digital inventory log. Evelyn lifted the form from the clip and read the timestamp again. For the first time, she looked at Daniel not as a man asking to be believed, but as a man standing beside a record that might be impossible to explain. Daniel looked at the unsigned warning form for another second, then handed it back to Evelyn without trying to explain himself. The scanner log will show where I was, he said. Grant gave a small sigh, the kind reserved for an employee making paperwork harder than it needed to be. We can review that later. Right now, receiving is behind. Daniel nodded once. Then I should get back. He closed the Navy lunchbox, pressed the curling yellow star sticker flat with his thumb, and slipped the empty container beneath his arm. The break room door swung shut behind him, cutting off the low murmur of voices. Out on the warehouse floor, the air was cooler and smelled of cardboard dust, pallet wood, and hydraulic fluid. Forklift alarms chirped in uneven intervals. Somewhere above the steel racks, a loose ventilation panel clicked every time the system pushed out another breath of cold air. Daniel crossed receiving without looking back. His stomach tightened beneath his work shirt, but he ignored it. Near the end of the service corridor, he stopped beside a gray utility door marked contract cleaning storage. He looked once toward the ceiling camera, though not because he expected anyone to be watching. The camera had been replaced the week before, its housing still too clean for the dusty hallway. Daniel set the lunchbox on a narrow metal shelf and unfolded the brown paper bag marked for Mara. He placed the polished apple inside, then added the packet of crackers Lily had tucked beside his sandwich that morning. At the bottom of his vest pocket, his fingers found a creased bus pass good for one ride across town. He had bought it in case his pickup failed again before payday. For a moment, he held it between two grease-darkened fingers. Then he slid it into the bag. She needs it more, he murmured, though no one was there to hear. The janitorial cart stood in the corner, angled strangely against the wall. Daniel noticed the right rear wheel before he noticed anything else. It sat crooked beneath the frame, its rubber edge scraped pale from dragging. A length of plastic packing strap had wrapped itself around the axle, tightening each time the wheel turned. 3 orange maintenance tags hung from the handle. Each had been stamped closed. Daniel read the last line on the newest one. User error. He ran his thumb over the bent wheel and felt the metal wobble. If Mara pushed that cart down the service ramp loaded with water, the wheel could lock without warning. Daniel set the paper bag beneath her old brown coat, where she would find it without anyone else seeing. Then he crouched beside the cart. His knees cracked softly against the concrete. From his belt pouch, he took a stubby wrench, a flat screwdriver, and a rag folded into quarters. The tools were cheap, worn smooth by years of use, but he handled them with care. He loosened the axle cap, pulled away the packing strap, and worked a thread of mop cord from the bearing. The wheel dropped into his palm. Behind him, the utility door opened. Mara Ruiz stopped with one hand on the frame. She was still wearing her gray cleaning uniform beneath an oversized cardigan, her dark hair pinned up with a plastic clip. Daniel. He looked over his shoulder. Back wheel seized. Maintenance said I overloaded it. You didn't. They closed the ticket. I saw. Mara stepped closer, embarrassed by the condition of the cart as if it belonged to her instead of the company. You don't have to fix it. Daniel turned the wheel, listening to the dry scrape inside the bearing. It has to go down the ramp. I've been pulling it backward. He stopped. Don't do that tonight. His tone was not sharp, but it carried enough weight that she nodded. Daniel cleaned the bearing, reset the wheel, and tightened the cap until the wobble disappeared. He tested the cart forward, backward, then pressed his foot against the brake. The lock caught cleanly. Mara noticed the paper bag under her coat. What's that? Probably yours. Did you leave it? Daniel wiped the wrench with the rag. The wheel's safe now. Test it before the ramp. She looked from the bag to his empty lunchbox. Daniel. He stood. Your boys still taking the number 6 bus? Mara's expression changed. How did you know that? You mentioned it last week. He slid the tools back into his pouch. Pass is in the bag. I can't keep taking things from you. You're not taking. Then what am I doing? Daniel looked at the crooked maintenance tags hanging from the handle. Getting through the week. Mara lowered her eyes. For a second, the hallway filled only with the distant beeping of a forklift backing through receiving. Daniel thought of Lily waiting outside Willow Creek Elementary every afternoon with her backpack against her knees, pretending she was not worried whenever his truck arrived late. He thought of the insurance notice folded inside his kitchen drawer, the one that said his coverage could change if his hours fell again. He thought of his wife's voice from years before, telling him that fear made people count what they might lose, while grace made them notice what someone else had already lost. He did not say any of that. He only picked up the Navy lunchbox. Tell the boys the crackers are from Lily. Mara touched the top of the paper bag. Does she know? She packed them. She's 9. She notices things. The utility door opened again. Grant stood in the hallway with his tablet held against his chest. His gaze moved from Daniel's tools to the repaired wheel, then to the paper bag beneath Mara's coat. Mercer, he said mildly. You're not assigned to maintenance. No. And distributing personal items to contractors can create expectations the company is not responsible for. Mara's hand withdrew from the bag. Daniel saw it and stepped half a pace between her and Grant, not as a challenge, but enough to keep the attention on himself. The wheel was unsafe. Grant looked at the 3 closed maintenance tags. The issue was reviewed. Daniel rolled the cart forward. The wheel turned silently. It was closed. Grant's expression held for a beat. Same thing. Not always. Grant smiled as if Daniel had proven his point about being difficult. Get back to receiving. Daniel nodded. Before leaving, he took one of the orange maintenance tags from the handle, folded it once, and slipped it into the outer pocket of his lunchbox. Grant noticed but said nothing. From the far end of the corridor, Evelyn had seen only the final moments. Daniel stepping away from the bag, Mara touching the repaired cart, Grant dismissing the entire exchange as a boundary problem. She did not yet know who had brought the food or why the maintenance tickets had been closed. But when the cart rolled past her without a scrape, she looked down at the purple note still inside her black folder and understood that Daniel Mercer's quiet habits were beginning to contradict the company's records in more than one place. By the time Daniel returned to receiving, Grant had already turned the repaired cart into a problem. A message waited on the supervisor terminal beside Daniel's station. Unauthorized maintenance intervention. Improper distribution of personal goods to contract staff. Potential liability exposure. The words glowed coldly against the gray screen while forklifts moved behind him in slow yellow. Arcs. Grant had not raised his voice. He had not threatened anyone. He had simply translated kindness into misconduct and placed it inside the system where it could follow Daniel longer than any insult. You repaired company equipment without approval. The wheel was locking. That isn't the point. Daniel looked toward the service corridor. Then what is? Grant folded his hands over the tablet at his waist. The warehouse lights reflected in its black glass, cutting his face into clean, controlled angles. Nearby workers pretended to scan labels while listening. The point is procedure, Grant said. People get hurt when employees decide rules do not apply to them. Daniel glanced at the orange maintenance tag he had tucked into the outer pocket of his Navy lunchbox. The paper edge showed above the zipper, bent where he had folded it. People also get hurt when a broken wheel is marked fixed. Grant's expression did not change. It was reviewed by maintenance. It was closed by management. You are not qualified to make that distinction. Daniel rested both palms on the steel counter. The metal was cold beneath the thin grime on his fingers. He could smell packing tape, dust, and the sharp citrus cleaner Mara used on the concrete near the loading doors. Was the cart inspected before the ticket was closed? It was a small question. No accusation. No speech. Yet the scanner beeps around them seemed to slow. Grant looked down at the tablet. The matter was resolved according to policy. That wasn't my question. Grant gave him a patient smile. And this is not an interrogation. Across the warehouse, Evelyn stood with Tessa near the glass wall of the operations office. She could not hear every word, but she saw Grant's body angle between Daniel and the nearest security camera. She also saw Daniel remove nothing from his pocket, make no show of the tag, and return quietly to his inventory sheet when Grant dismissed him with a nod. That restraint troubled her more than anger would have. A man trying to manipulate a room usually needed the room to notice. Daniel seemed to be doing the opposite. Still, Evelyn did not assume innocence. Good people made mistakes. Desperate people hid them. And employees who felt mistreated sometimes rewrote ordinary decisions as persecution because pain had a way of narrowing the view. She turned to Tessa. Pull Mercer's complaint history. Tessa hesitated. Grant says there isn't one. Then verify that. 20 minutes later, the two women stood inside the HR office overlooking the warehouse floor. The room smelled faintly of printer toner and lavender hand lotion. A small fan pushed warm air across stacks of benefit forms. Tessa opened Daniel's file on a desktop monitor and scrolled past attendance records, safety certifications, and performance reviews. His accuracy ratings were high. His disciplinary section contained the unsigned warning from the break room and one note about refusing evening work. Then Tessa stopped. There. A complaint had been submitted 3 months earlier through the employee portal. Daniel had requested replacement hours after repeated night shift removals, explaining that he needed to remain above the insurance threshold for Lily. He offered early mornings, Saturdays, Sundays, and inventory reset days. There was no anger in the wording, no demand for special treatment. Just dates, available hours, and one sentence near the bottom. My daughter's coverage depends on consistent scheduling, so I am asking for a written answer. The complaint had been closed 17 minutes after submission. Status: resolved. Employee no longer wishes to pursue. Evelyn leaned closer to the screen. Where is his confirmation? Tessa clicked through the attached documents. Nothing. No signature. No email. No recorded call. Only a note entered under Grant Vale's credentials. He may have spoken with Grant directly, Tessa said. Managers can document verbal resolutions. Can they close a benefits-related complaint without acknowledgement? They should not. Should not or cannot? Tessa's fingers paused over the keyboard. Cannot under current policy. The fan clicked as it turned from left to right. Below them, Daniel guided a pallet jack around a stack of damaged cartons, stopping to red ape one corner before it split. He did not look toward the office. Evelyn returned her attention to the screen. Ask Grant. Grant arrived carrying the same tablet and the same measured expression. He took the chair across from them but did not sit back. Daniel submitted that complaint during a difficult week, he explained. I spoke to him in my office. He decided he did not want to escalate. When? Evelyn asked. That afternoon. What time? Around 3:10. Tessa opened the log entry. You entered the resolution at 3:17. Grant nodded. That sounds right. And he was in your office? Yes. Alone? Yes. Grant's answers came smoothly, each one reasonable enough to survive on its own. Evelyn watched him the way she watched executives during merger negotiations, not for the words themselves but for the spaces between them. Why didn't he sign the withdrawal? She asked. He was embarrassed. About needing insurance? About bringing personal pressure into a scheduling issue. The answer fit the story Grant had already built. Daniel was emotional. Daniel blurred boundaries. Daniel later forgot what he had agreed to. Evelyn almost accepted the possibility. Then Tessa opened the warehouse activity log. Every scanner assigned to receiving carried a timestamp and location marker. At 3:08 p.m., Daniel's badge scanned an emergency medical supply shipment at Dock 12. At 3:11, he scanned the second pallet. At 3:14, he corrected a damaged label. Dock 12 was nearly half a mile from Grant's office, separated by 2 secured doors and a freight corridor. Tessa looked at the map, then at Grant. He couldn't have been here at 3:10. Grant's eyes shifted only once, toward the monitor. The scanner may have been used by someone else. Evelyn turned. With Daniel's badge? Employees share equipment. Not security badges, Tessa said. Grant adjusted the cuff of his shirt. Then perhaps I'm remembering the time incorrectly. It was 3 months ago. His explanation remained plausible on the surface. Memory failed. Schedules blurred. Nothing proved he had falsified the complaint. But Daniel's question about the maintenance cart returned to Evelyn with uncomfortable precision. Was it inspected before the ticket was closed? The same pattern now sat on the screen. A problem reported. A record closed. No proof the person affected had ever agreed. Find the original access log, Evelyn said. Tessa searched the audit trail. The complaint had been opened under Grant's account 3 minutes after Daniel submitted it, edited 12 minutes later, and closed at 17. No other account had touched it. Grant leaned forward. I handled it promptly. That is not wrongdoing. No, Evelyn said. Promptness is not wrongdoing. Her voice stayed level. But it is unusual when the person you claim to have spoken with was somewhere else. Grant's mouth tightened, then relaxed. Are we really building an investigation around one employee's memory and a scanner ping? Evelyn did not answer. She looked through the glass at Daniel, who was kneeling beside a torn pallet wrap, helping the young loader from lunch resecure the shipment before a supervisor noticed. Tessa clicked into a related folder. 6 more complaints appeared, each closed in under 20 minutes. Each carried the exact same sentence. Employee no longer wishes to pursue. And every one of them had been edited through Grant Vale's account. 6 complaints. 6 identical closures. 6 people whose voices had been reduced to the same sentence. Evelyn stared at the screen until the words blurred into a pattern instead of separate cases. Grant remained seated across from her, one hand resting beside his tablet. These records should be reviewed carefully, he said. But we should avoid creating a narrative before we understand the operational context. Then we'll create no narrative, Evelyn replied. We'll observe. Tessa turned from the monitor. Observe what? Evelyn closed the black folder containing Lily's purple note. Whether Daniel Mercer behaves differently when he believes someone important is watching. The next morning, the warehouse cafeteria smelled of roasted chicken, warm bread, and industrial sanitizer. Stainless steel trays gleamed beneath heat lamps, brighter and fuller than anything normally served on a weekday. A printed sign announced a 1-day vendor evaluation and instructed every employee on the afternoon shift to take a complimentary meal. No executive names appeared. No cameras had been added. Nothing suggested the food was part of a test. Daniel entered after finishing a delayed inventory count at Dock 7. His orange safety vest carried a line of cardboard dust across one shoulder, and the Navy lunchbox hung empty from 2 fingers. He paused when he saw the trays. Free today, the cafeteria worker said. Take whatever you want. Daniel looked over the roasted chicken, rice, green beans, bread rolls, fruit cups, and cartons of milk. For everyone? Everyone on shift. He filled one tray without excess, choosing a chicken breast, rice, beans, a roll, an apple, and 2 milk cartons. Grant watched from beside the coffee station, speaking quietly into his phone. He knows she's still here, he murmured. Watch what he does. Evelyn stood in the glass operations room above the cafeteria, partly hidden behind vertical blinds. From Daniel's seat in the far corner, the room was invisible through the glare reflecting off the windows. Tessa stood beside Evelyn with the camera feed open on a tablet. Daniel sat alone. He removed 3 sheets of wax paper from his lunchbox and began dividing the meal. The chicken and most of the rice went into the brown paper bag marked for Mara. 1 milk carton and the bread roll went into a smaller insulated pouch with Lily's name written inside the flap. Daniel kept the green beans, a little rice, half the apple, and 1 milk carton. From his shirt pocket, he took a small white pill bottle, shook 1 tablet into his palm, and swallowed it with the milk. Grant's voice came through Tessa's phone before Daniel had finished eating. "This is exactly what I meant. He is creating a scene." Evelyn looked down at the nearly empty cafeteria corner. No one sat near Daniel. No one appeared to notice him. "For whom?" she asked. Grant paused. "He knows leadership is monitoring employee engagement today." "How?" "People talk." "Did you tell him?" "Of course not." Below them, Daniel folded the paper bag closed, wrote Mara's name across the top, and tucked it inside his vest. Then Tyler, the young loader from the day before, entered the cafeteria with his right hand wrapped in a thin elastic support. He took 1 look at the food line and began to leave. Daniel noticed. "Tyler." The young man stopped. "You eat." "Not hungry." Daniel looked at the empty tray in Tyler's hands. "That wasn't the question." Tyler glanced toward the register. "Payroll messed up my card. I'll fix it Friday." Daniel slid the untouched half of his apple and the 2nd milk carton across the table. Tyler shook his head. "You already gave me your sandwich yesterday. Then you know I don't charge interest." Tyler gave a tired smile, took the food, and sat down across from him. Daniel did not look toward the glass office. He did not scan the room for approval. He simply ate his beans while Tyler drank the milk. Evelyn's fingers rested on the closed folder. The air conditioner clicked on above them, its low rush suddenly loud in the silence. "Pull older cafeteria footage," she said. Tessa frowned. "How far back?" 3 weeks. Grant's reply came almost immediately over the phone. "That camera system has been unreliable. We had outages." Tessa looked at the maintenance panel beside the live feed. "I don't see an outage report. It may not have been documented yet." 3 weeks ago? Grant's tone stayed smooth. "These systems fail intermittently. I'm trying to save you from drawing conclusions from incomplete footage." Evelyn slowly placed the folder on the desk. "Then preserve everything before it becomes more incomplete." Tessa sent an access request to the central server rather than the local warehouse system. Grant could view recent footage, but archived recordings had been transferred off-site after the security upgrade. The loading symbol turned in the center of the screen. Below, Daniel carried the bag for Mara toward the service corridor, unaware that anyone had followed his movements beyond the ordinary sweep of warehouse cameras. The archive opened. Tessa selected the same cafeteria angle from 22 days earlier. Daniel appeared at the same corner table wearing the same orange vest. No executives were present. No vendor test had been announced. He opened a small meal he had brought from home, divided it with the same deliberate care, and placed the larger portion into a paper bag. He ate less than half. The next day showed the same pattern. Then another. Different food, same choice. Sometimes an apple. Sometimes crackers. Once, only a peanut butter sandwich cut into 2 unequal pieces, the larger half disappearing into the bag marked for Mara. Evelyn watched without speaking. The evidence did not prove Grant had falsified records. It did not explain the 6 closed complaints. But it proved one thing clearly. Daniel's generosity had begun long before he knew she would ever step inside the warehouse. Grant entered the operations room 2 minutes later, still composed. "I understand you reviewed old footage." "We did." "Then you also understand that repeated food distribution can create dependency and confusion about company benefits." Daniel's quiet kindness had survived one accusation, so Grant built another around it. Evelyn turned the monitor toward him. "You said the camera had failed." "I said it was unreliable. The maintenance log says otherwise." Grant glanced at the screen, then adjusted his tie. "A functioning camera does not make his actions appropriate." "No," Evelyn said. but it makes your description of them less reliable. Tessa advanced the footage another 10 minutes. Daniel had already left the cafeteria. The camera continued recording the empty tables, the humming vending machines, and the gray door leading toward HR. Then Grant appeared on screen. He looked both ways, lifted a stack of employee complaint forms from the HR intake tray, tucked them beneath his tablet, and carried them into his private office. No one in the operations room spoke. Grant's hand stopped halfway toward the folder on the desk. The footage had begun as a test of Daniel Mercer's character, but it had just opened a door into what Grant Vale had been doing when he believed no one was watching. The image on the monitor froze with Grant Vale's hand wrapped around a stack of employee complaints. For several seconds, no one in the operations room moved. The printer behind Tessa clicked once, released a blank page, then went still. Grant looked at the screen, then at Evelyn as though he could still decide what the footage meant if he spoke carefully enough. Those forms were not secure in the public tray, he said. I moved them to protect employee confidentiality. Into your private office? Tessa asked. Temporarily. Why weren't they logged? Because I intended to return them. Evelyn did not raise her voice. Did you? Grant's jaw shifted. I would need to review the dates. The warehouse moved below the glass like a machine unaware that one of its hidden gears had begun to crack. Forklifts crossed between aisles. Pallet wrap flashed beneath fluorescent lights. Daniel was visible near Dock 7, checking a shipment seal with the same steady attention he gave everything else. He had no idea the camera test had moved beyond his lunch, beyond Mara's cart, and into a pattern that could reach half the warehouse. Tessa copied the archived clip to a restricted drive. Then she opened the complaint records again, this time searching by the 6 identical closure notes. Each case belonged to someone whose hours had been reduced after raising a concern. One was a mother named Renee Holloway who had requested morning shifts after her childcare provider changed hours. Another was a diabetic forklift operator who had asked not to be scheduled through meal breaks. 2 were contract workers who reported damaged equipment. One had complained that missed hours would drop his family below the company health plan threshold. Every complaint had been opened under Grant's credentials. Every complaint had been closed before the end of the shift. That still does not prove misconduct, Grant said. Managers resolve issues informally all the time. Then there should be evidence of resolution, Evelyn replied. A call, an email, a signed note. Not every conversation produces paperwork. Every closure did. Tessa pulled the schedule history onto a second screen. Rows of names appeared in pale blue, then changed to red where hours had been removed. She matched the complaint dates to the schedule edits. Renee lost 2 morning shifts the week after her childcare request. The diabetic operator lost a full Saturday after reporting missed meal periods. The contract workers were removed from overtime rotation after filing equipment tickets. Daniel's pattern was the clearest. He submitted his request for replacement hours on March 8th. On March 9th, Grant changed 3 of his shifts from assigned to voluntary reduction. On March 11th, Daniel filed the complaint that vanished in 17 minutes. On March 12th, his name appeared in a management summary under the phrase successful employee adaptation. Tessa opened the email. Grant had written it to the regional office. Mercer demonstrates that employees value reduced hours when given flexibility around family obligations. Evelyn read the sentence twice. Then Tessa placed Daniel's request beside it. I am available for 12 additional hours this week, including Saturday and Sunday. My daughter's insurance depends on maintaining the required average. The 2 documents sat next to each other on the screen, written on the same day, telling opposite stories. The room seemed to contract around them. Grant reached for his phone, then stopped before touching it. A line of moisture had appeared along his hairline despite the cold air flowing from the vent. That wording was part of a broader operational report, he said. It was not intended as a personal characterization. You used his name, Tessa said, as an example of something he explicitly said he did not want, Evelyn added. Grant's tone sharpened by only a fraction. We were under pressure to reduce labor costs without layoffs. I made decisions to keep the facility viable. By calling forced cuts voluntary? By using available flexibility. Evelyn looked through the glass at Daniel. He was helping a driver reposition a damaged pallet before it tipped against the loading rail. No one applauded. No one photographed him. He simply braced one shoulder against the wood, guided the driver back, then returned to his scanner. The purple note inside Evelyn's black folder felt heavier than paper. She still did not know everything. She did not know whether Grant had acted alone, whether regional leaders had encouraged the numbers, or whether Tessa's department had ignored signs it should have caught. But she knew the story was no longer about one man's lunch. "Show me the incentive structure," she said. Tessa opened the quarterly performance plan. Grant's management bonus increased as labor spending fell, provided the warehouse avoided formal grievances, safety escalations, and benefit interruptions attributed to company action. A clean dashboard meant more money. The 6 complaints had been closed before they became formal grievances. The damaged cart had been marked user error before it became a safety escalation. Daniel's lost hours had been recorded as voluntary, preventing his insurance risk from appearing as company-caused. The system did not contain one dramatic theft. It contained dozens of small translations, each one changing harm into efficiency. Grant stood. "I think this conversation has moved beyond a reasonable review. We should involve legal before any more conclusions are drawn." Evelyn remained seated. "Sit down. I am trying to protect the company." "So am I." "Then this should be handled privately." The words came too quickly. Tessa's eyes lifted from the screen. Grant heard himself and softened his tone. "I mean carefully. Rumors could damage morale before the facts are complete." Evelyn turned the incentive document toward him. "The facts are becoming complete because people were kept apart." Grant slowly sat again. Tessa searched the payroll system for employees whose hours had fallen below benefit thresholds. 11 names appeared. 4 had dependent children. 3 had active medical claims. 2 had applied for emergency assistance and been denied because their reduced schedules were classified as voluntary. Mara Ruiz did not appear at all. As a contract worker, she existed in the warehouse's safety logs and cleaning schedules, but nowhere in the company's support system. Daniel's paper bags had been crossing a gap the company had designed itself not to see. The office door opened. Daniel stood outside with the orange maintenance tag in one hand and his navy lunchbox under the other arm. He had been sent up by a floor coordinator who said HR wanted the tag. He looked from Evelyn to Tessa, then to Grant. "You asked for this?" Tessa nodded. "The cart ticket." Daniel placed the folded orange tag on the desk. Grease darkened one corner. The stamp closed ran across the center. Beneath it, the original complaint number had been crossed out and replaced by a handwritten code. Tessa entered the code. It led to a monthly safety report signed by Grant. 0 unresolved equipment hazards. Evelyn watched Daniel's face as he read the screen. No satisfaction appeared there, only recognition, followed by a tired stillness. "How many people know about this?" he asked. "Not enough yet," Evelyn said. Grant leaned forward. "Daniel, this is an internal review. It would be inappropriate to discuss partial findings with the floor." Daniel looked at him. "Are the hours being restored?" "No decisions have been made." "Is Mara's cart being replaced?" "That is a separate issue." "Are the other complaints being reopened?" Grant's patience tightened. "You are not in a position to direct this process." Daniel turned to Evelyn. He could have asked for his own hours. He could have demanded the warning be removed or used the moment to humiliate Grant. Instead, he reached into his vest and unfolded a small piece of paper. 4 names were written on it. Renee Holloway, Marcus Bell, Elena Price, Devon Shaw. "Start with them," he said. Tessa read the names. "Why?" "Renee got an eviction notice. Marcus is rationing insulin until his hours come back. Elena stopped reporting the broken dock light because her last complaint disappeared. Devon's sleeping in his car with his son 3 nights a week." Grant exhaled through his nose. You have been organizing employees against management. Daniel's eyes stayed level. I've been listening and collecting stories. Because no one collected the complaints. The air vent shut off. Without it, the room became unnaturally quiet. Evelyn could hear the faint ticking of her silver watch and the distant warning beep of a reversing forklift below. She looked again at Daniel's list, then at the incentive plan, the closed maintenance tag, the duplicate complaint language, and the email that turned a father begging for hours into proof that workers welcomed less pay. Do you want to file a personal claim? Tessa asked him. Daniel glanced at the black folder where the edge of Lily's purple note showed between the pages. Not first. Why not? Because I still have a truck if I need somewhere to sleep. He tapped Renee's name with one finger. She doesn't. Evelyn's hand closed over the folder. That answer did what the lunchbox alone could not. It separated Daniel's character from his need. He was not protecting others to improve his own case. He was willing to delay his own relief so the people in greater danger would be seen first. Grant looked toward the office camera mounted above the door, then back at Evelyn. This is exactly why we need to control the message before people panic. Evelyn stood. Her reflection appeared in the glass beside the warehouse floor, superimposed over rows of workers whose lives had been reduced to colored blocks and quarterly percentages. No, she said. This is why there will be no message until there is a record. She instructed Tessa to preserve every schedule edit, every complaint, every safety closure, every payroll classification, and every email tied to the incentive program. She froze Grant's pending promotion and his access to complaint records. Then she told Daniel to return to work without discussing the review, not because she doubted him now, but because the evidence had to be protected before anyone could erase the rest. Daniel picked up his lunchbox. At the door, he paused. Closed doors are how this happened. Evelyn looked at the 6 identical complaint notes on the screen. I know. By late afternoon, the first audit export filled 3 secure folders and identified 23 schedule changes that could not be explained as voluntary. The truth had become too large for one office, too documented for a quiet correction, and too human to be buried under another professional phrase. Evelyn looked down at the break room through the glass, at the table where Daniel's lunch had been opened and his dignity had been questioned, and made the decision Grant feared most. The next conversation would happen there, in front of everyone whose silence had been counted as consent. By 4 o'clock, the break room no longer looked like a place where people came to eat. The vending machines had been unplugged, their dark glass reflecting rows of employees standing shoulder to shoulder along the walls. Folding chairs faced the scarred laminate table where Daniel's Navy lunchbox had been opened 2 days earlier. It sat there again beneath the fluorescent lights, the yellow star sticker pressed flat against the lid. Evelyn's black folder rested beside it. Tessa had connected a laptop to the wall-mounted training screen, but the display remained blank. Daniel entered last from the warehouse floor. Cardboard dust marked one sleeve of his faded blue shirt, and a dark line of grease crossed the knee of his work pants. He carried no stack of evidence. No speech waited in his pocket. He held only a folded sheet with 4 employee names and the lunchbox handle between his fingers. The room followed him with uneasy eyes. Some people looked ashamed. Others still looked uncertain. Grant Vale stood near the screen in a pressed white shirt and charcoal tie, composed enough to suggest he had called the meeting himself. Thank you for coming, Evelyn said. Her voice carried without effort. This is a formal review of scheduling, complaint handling, and employee support at this facility. No one will be interrupted. No one will be punished for answering a direct question truthfully. Grant inclined his head. I appreciate the opportunity to clear up what has become an emotionally charged misunderstanding. Daniel took a place near the end of the table rather than beside Evelyn. He remained standing. Grant opened a leather portfolio and laid out several printed photographs. The facts matter, he said. And the facts are that Mr. Mercer has repeatedly distributed food and transportation assistance to contract personnel and junior employees. Those gestures may appear generous. But when someone later asks those same people to support a complaint against management, generosity can become pressure. A murmur moved along the back wall. One photograph showed Daniel leaving the brown bag in the service corridor. Another showed him sliding a milk carton toward Tyler. A third caught him speaking to Mara beside the repaired cart. The images were real. Arranged in order, they looked almost like a campaign. Grant let the silence work for him. "I am not questioning Mr. Mercer's intentions," he continued. "I am asking whether employees receiving personal help felt free to disagree with him. Managers have a duty to prevent informal influence from replacing proper procedure." For a moment, the explanation landed. A few workers glanced at one another. Even Tessa looked down at the photographs before returning her attention to the laptop. Evelyn did not intervene. She had promised herself she would let Grant build the strongest version of his defense. A lie told under pressure often revealed more through structure than volume. "Did Daniel ask anyone here to file a complaint?" she asked. Grant folded his hands. "Not in those words. Did he ask anyone to lie? Manipulation is rarely that direct. Did he ask for anything in return for food?" Grant turned slightly toward the employees. "That is difficult to prove. Gratitude creates obligation, whether spoken or not." Daniel's eyes settled on the photographs. His face did not harden. He looked almost tired. "May I ask one question?" Evelyn nodded. Daniel turned toward Grant. "Who took the pictures?" Grant did not hesitate. "Supervisory staff documenting unauthorized distribution. Before or after my complaint was closed?" A chair leg scraped once across the tile and stopped. Grant glanced toward Tessa. "The dates vary." "Do they?" Daniel asked. His voice remained low. Tessa enlarged the first image on the screen. A timestamp appeared in the lower corner. It had been taken 6 weeks after Daniel's complaint disappeared and 2 months before Evelyn visited the warehouse. The second was older. The third had been captured by a supervisor's phone the week Mara's cart was marked safe without inspection. Daniel looked back at Grant. "You were collecting pictures before I knew there was an investigation." Grant's expression tightened almost invisibly. "We document policy concerns as they arise." "But you didn't document the broken wheel." The room went quiet again. Grant looked toward Evelyn. "This is becoming adversarial." "It became adversarial when you used photographs of food to answer questions about altered records," she said. Grant breathed in slowly. "Then let us discuss records. Mr. Mercer declined evening shifts. Those refusals created coverage gaps. Management reassigned hours accordingly. That is not retaliation. It is scheduling." He removed another document from his portfolio and placed it on the table. It showed 2 night shifts Daniel had declined, each initialed by Grant and marked employee unavailable. "There," Grant said. 2 refusals. Signed and dated. Several employees leaned forward. The document looked official. Daniel did not touch it. "Those are mine," he said. Grant's shoulders eased. "Thank you." "The refusals are mine," Daniel repeated. "The missing replacement requests aren't." Tessa clicked once. The screen displayed Daniel's 2 electronic requests for Saturday morning and Sunday inventory reset. Both had been submitted before the evening shifts were removed. Both showed the same status beneath them, viewed by G. Vale. Grant's tie shifted as he swallowed. "Open shifts are not guaranteed." "No," Daniel said. "But saying I refused work is different from saying you refused the hours I offered." No one whispered now. The air conditioner cycled off, leaving the room with the dry smell of coffee grounds and warm plastic. Evelyn placed one hand beside the black folder but did not open it. "Mr. Vale, why were those requests absent from the scheduling summary?" "Because they were not relevant to the operational decision. They were relevant to the statement that he did not want to work." "I never said he did not want to work." Tessa brought up the unsigned warning form from Part 2. Lack of flexibility appeared in bold near the top. Below it sat the claim that Daniel had acknowledged the problem in Grant's office at 3:10 p.m. Evelyn looked at Daniel. "Where were you?" "Doc 12. "Can you prove it?" "The scanner can." Grant's voice came in quickly. "Badge activity does not prove physical presence. Employees sometimes scan for one another." Tyler stepped away from the back wall. His wrapped wrist had been replaced by a simple black brace. "Not at Dock 12, he said. Grant turned. "Tyler, no one asked you to speculate." "I'm not." Tyler kept his hands at his sides. "Emergency medical shipments require the assigned badge and a camera check. I was there. Daniel fixed my label mistake." The attention in the room shifted toward him. He looked frightened by it but did not step back. "He could have reported me," Tyler continued. "He didn't." Grant's voice softened. "You are grateful to him. That is precisely the influence I am describing." Tyler's face reddened. Daniel intervened before the younger man could be pushed further. "Leave him out of it." "He made himself part of it," Grant replied. "No," Daniel said. "You did." The words were quiet, but they cut through the room with more force than a shout. Evelyn motioned for Tyler to return to the wall, sparing him further questioning. Then she turned toward Mara, who stood near Tessa in her gray cleaning uniform, fingers curled around the strap of her purse. "Ms. Ruiz, did Daniel Mercer ask you to speak today?" "No." "Did he ever tell you the food came from him?" Mara looked at Daniel, then at the brown bag placed beside the lunchbox. "I didn't know it did." Grant gave a restrained shake of his head. "She may be protecting him." Mara's shoulders drew inward. For 1 second, she looked like someone preparing to apologize for taking up space. Daniel moved his list of names away from himself and toward Evelyn. "Then don't ask whether I'm kind," he said. "Ask where the company's help was." Tessa opened the employee assistance records. Mara's name did not appear. Neither did any contract cleaners. Grant stepped closer to the table. Contract workers are supported through their employer. Hartwell cannot assume responsibility for every individual who enters this building. "But Hartwell recorded her cart as safe," Daniel said. "Hartwell scheduled her on the ramp. That is a separate operational matter. It was separate until she could have been hurt." Grant turned to Evelyn. "This meeting is mixing scheduling, charity, safety, and personal hardship into one emotional argument." For a moment, it seemed he might regain control. His explanation offered categories, boundaries, and procedures. It made the suffering in the room sound unfortunate but unrelated. Evelyn looked at the employees along the wall. "That is what we are here to determine," she said. "Whether these matters were separate, or whether the same system kept translating each one into something harmless." Grant closed his portfolio. "Then I request legal counsel before any surveillance is shown." The room tightened. His first clear attempt to stop the meeting had arrived. Evelyn did not reject it. "You may have counsel during the disciplinary process. This meeting is a preservation review based on company records. Publicly displaying partial footage could prejudice that process. Then we will display it in full sequence." Tessa placed her finger over the laptop trackpad. The blank screen shifted to a paused frame of the service corridor. Daniel was visible holding the paper bag. Mara had not yet entered. Above them, the camera timestamp glowed in white numbers. Grant stared at the screen. Daniel remained beside the table, neither triumphant nor afraid. Evelyn opened the black folder, removed Lily's folded purple note, and set it on the Navy lunchbox without reading it. "We began with this," she said. "But we will not decide the truth from a child's words." Tessa cued 3 video files, the complaint access log, Daniel's request for 12 additional hours, and the management bonus report. On the screen, the first camera file waited at the exact second before Daniel placed the bag beneath Mara's coat. Evelyn looked around the room once. "Now we see what happened when each person believed no one was watching." Tessa pressed play. The first video began with Daniel standing alone in the service corridor, the brown paper bag in one hand and his empty Navy lunchbox in the other. The timestamp glowed in the upper corner. He placed the bag beneath Mara's coat, repaired the cartwheel, tested the brake, and left before she arrived. No one in the break room spoke. Tessa played the second file. It had been recorded 3 weeks earlier, before Evelyn's visit, before Daniel knew anyone might question him. Again, he divided his food, labeled the larger portion for Mara, and walked away without waiting to be thanked. Grant's fingers tightened around the edge of his portfolio. "Those clips prove only that he gave her food," he said. His voice was still controlled, but dryness had entered it. "They do not prove why." Evelyn looked at Mara. "Did Mr. Mercer ever ask you for loyalty, testimony, or silence?" Mara shook her head. "He never even told me it was him." "Did anyone from Hartwell provide those meals?" "I thought they did." Tessa opened the assistant's ledger. The screen showed months of charitable announcements, employee wellness posters, and budget codes. Beside Mara Ruiz's name, there was nothing. No meal voucher. No transit support. No emergency grant. Evelyn turned toward Grant. "You said the company was supporting her through the contractor." "That was my understanding." Tessa displayed the contractor agreement. It covered wages, uniforms, and liability insurance. It contained no food assistance and no transportation benefit. Grant glanced toward the dark window above the sink, where the camera reflected a pale square of light. Then the contractor failed to meet an informal expectation. Evelyn did not answer. Tessa moved to the next file. The service corridor appeared again, but Daniel was no longer in frame. Grant entered alone, looked toward the camera, lifted the employee complaints from the HR intake tray, and carried them into his office. The date matched the week Daniel's complaint disappeared. A pen slipped from Grant's portfolio and struck the tile. The small plastic sound seemed louder than it should have. He bent to pick it up, but his hand missed once before closing around it. "I explained that," he said. "Confidential documents were left unsecured." "Then where did you secure them?" Evelyn asked. "My office." "Where is the transfer log?" "There wasn't one." "Where are the originals?" Grant looked at Tessa. "HR should have them." Tessa's face did not change. "We do not." The room held its breath. Evelyn nodded to the screen. Tessa opened the complaint audit. 6 cases appeared in a row, each closed within 20 minutes. Each marked employee no longer wishes to pursue. Each edited through Grant's credentials. Then came Daniel's scanner record, 3:10 p.m. When Grant claimed Daniel had withdrawn his complaint in person, Daniel's badge was active at Dock 12. A camera still showed him beside an emergency medical shipment, holding a damaged label beneath the scanner light. Tyler stood 3 feet away in the frame. Grant tried once more. "Badge records can be misunderstood." Tessa enlarged the dock image. Daniel's face was visible. The warehouse seal clock showed the same minute. "Not this one," she said. Someone near the wall exhaled slowly. A folding chair creaked beneath a worker shifting his weight. No one looked at Daniel as if he were begging anymore. They looked at the screen. Tessa placed 2 documents side by side. On the left was Daniel's request for 12 additional hours. On the right was Grant's report to the regional office describing Daniel as proof that employees preferred reduced hours. The dates matched. The timestamps were less than 4 hours apart. Grant stared at his own words. That summary reflected the scheduling outcome. "Not the employee's choice," Evelyn said. "The operational outcome," Grant replied. "You approved the labor reduction target." There it was, his last defense. Not innocence, but permission. Evelyn held his gaze. "Yes," she said. "I approved the policy." A murmur moved through the room, then stopped when she continued. "I approved incentives that rewarded lower costs and fewer formal complaints. I accepted reports that described forced reductions as flexibility. I did not ask who paid for those numbers. That failure is mine." Grant's posture changed. For a moment, relief flickered across his face, as though shared responsibility might soften his own. Then Tessa opened the bonus report. The screen showed the direct line between reduced labor hours, suppressed grievances, and Grant's quarterly compensation. Beneath it appeared the maintenance report claiming 0 unresolved hazards, signed the same day Mara's broken cart ticket was closed as user error. Then came the orange tag Daniel had kept in his lunchbox, grease darkening one corner, the original complaint number crossed out and replaced by Grant's handwritten code. The evidence no longer looked like isolated mistakes. It looked like a machine. Hours disappeared. Complaints vanished. Safety problems became employee error. Families lost benefits. Management earned rewards. Grant opened his mouth, but no explanation came. The break room lights hummed above him. A phone vibrated once inside someone's pocket and was silenced without being answered. Evelyn lifted Lily's folded note from the lunchbox lid. The purple ink had bled slightly where a drop of condensation touched the paper. "This note is not proof of misconduct," she said. "A child should never have to carry the burden of proving what adults did." Daniel's eyes lowered toward the yellow star sticker. Evelyn unfolded the page only far enough to reveal the final line. "But it tells us who Daniel Mercer was before any of us were watching." She read quietly. "You said helping only counts when nobody is watching." The room went still. Not the uncertain silence that had followed the open lunchbox. This silence had weight. The air conditioner clicked off. The projector fan whispered against the wall. Somewhere beyond the door, a forklift reversed, its warning tone distant and slow. Mara covered her mouth with one hand. Tyler stared at the floor. Tessa's fingers rested motionless on the keyboard. Grant looked toward the camera, then away. Daniel did not smile. He did not straighten as though a verdict had crowned him. He simply breathed in, slow and controlled, and placed one palm on the Navy lunchbox. Evelyn folded the note and returned it beneath the lid. Effective immediately, Mr. Vale is suspended from all supervisory duties, pending an independent investigation. His access to scheduling, complaints, payroll classifications, and safety records is revoked. Grant's face lost color. "Evelyn, we should discuss this privately." "We did," she said. "That is how it lasted." She turned toward the employees. "All schedule reductions tied to this program will be audited. Improperly removed hours will be restored where possible, lost wages will be repaid, and benefit coverage will be corrected without penalizing employees for management decisions. Contract workers will be included in the emergency meal and safety programs. Every closed complaint connected to this facility will be reopened under independent review." No one applauded. The moment was too serious for celebration. Justice had entered the room, but it had arrived carrying names, bills, missed medicine, and nights people could not get back. Evelyn looked at Daniel. "Where should we begin?" He slid the folded list of employees across the table. "With the people who stopped asking because no one answered." Tessa took the paper. Grant stood beside the blank space where his authority had been moments earlier, unable to make the room accept another explanation. Daniel closed the lunchbox gently. The latch clicked beneath his thumb. The truth had finally been recognized, but recognition was not yet healing, and everyone in that room waited to see what Daniel Mercer would do now that the power to ask for something had finally been placed in his hands.